I have a guy who's a mentor in my life. He's an agent. He's doing it for a workhorse. So he did what I did for twice as long. That 150, 200 homes a year, just pounding it out. But he's in his 60s now. He's worth a lot of money. Net worth wise, he makes a lot of money residually. And he's going through a transition that I went through, but I'm 20 years younger than him. So now he's asking me questions about it, which is interesting. Like, what is your schedule like? Is that weird that like you aren't doing those regimented activities, you know, whatever? What is interesting is I talked to him about like spending with a joyful heart. That is a biblical thing, or giving with a joyful heart. Because not only will you do that, but you also give a bunch of money away simultaneously.
That freaks Celia out.
I understand how it freaks her out, because when you first told me that you did that, it freaked me out, and I'm not even close to you or married to you.
There's a family that struggles financially, and they go to our school. I'm like, we should give her like $5,000.
And you just do it. That's the joyful heart thing. And what he told me, what Neil said, which was interesting, is that even though money's been such a defining thing in his life, he told me like in 2020, when he recognized that like everybody was like having a hard time, he started automatically tipping like 20% more than what he normally would. He started automatically like giving, and he's like, and it's what's interesting is I heard this said in a biblical context. It's the only place where God says to challenge him. The only one. Everywhere else, he's like, don't challenge me. But on giving part, he's like, just challenge me. But you embody that. I feel like I know
I'll give like a 100% tip.
You will, right? Freaking out, right? But you really are.
This $100 means way more than that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's true about it is your identity is not wrapped into it, and it doesn't have any control over you. A lot less than most. I'm sure it controls a little bit, like you sometimes think about it, but like you're like, that's like of the world type stuff, and you have it, so like.
But having the overhead too, I mean, I have a pretty big overhead with the coaching.
You do?
You know, because I haven't cracked the code on organic.
On what?
Organic.
Oh, traffic. So you have to spend money.
Yeah. So I'm spending $20,000 a month on this.
Wow. Are you really?
Some months 30. It sucks now with the election.
Because you're paying so much for the ads.
Yeah, because I'm competing against
and Harris, yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because I feel like the island shrinking in a way where we are in the cycle of real estate. Less people are participating, 3.8 million deals, which Leo said it's the lowest it's been in 15 years. But I think that joyful heart thing is interesting. And I'm increasingly like moving in that direction. It takes time to not idolize it. Because I think if I'm being authentic, is like in the past, like I idolized it. And I gave it way more power than it has. You know what I mean? Like the question is like from that book, Not a Fan. He's like, what do you get excited about? When things aren't working out, where do you go? You know what I would do if my business, like if I took less listings in a week than whatever, I'd look at money I'd go there to give me rest. It's like, it's the wrong place, bro. It's not the right, you're looking in the wrong place.
Do you have any quality of life sort of things that you do, like do you hire maid or
we got someone that comes in. That's the easiest trade.
It makes total sense to do it.
We have someone come in for 5 hours 3 times a week.
You do now?
And I can hardly wear I can only wear 2 pairs of underwear, 3 max, because they're cleaned like I'm right in. Yeah. And the ones I like are right on top.
Right on top. It's the only ones you wear anyway. It's like magic. Yeah. I think it's an issue of time. It goes back to that.
Well, we pay our girl $20 an hour.
Yeah. Well, and I told Carla, because we had somebody who comes in and if at first it was like frequency, and it's really me because I was like being small about it. I'm like, all right, we'll have them come like every other week. I understand how it can make you feel like in control perhaps, or like needed. Like that's not your highest and best use, dude. Well, and then Carla, she would come to me, and this is interesting for those who have significant others, but like, she would come to me and be like, hey, like, and I'm working and I'm doing all this stuff. She's like, well, I need your help with this stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm not saying like I'm above that, but it's definitely not my highest and best use. I have a very particular set of skills that allows me to do like a lot in an area. Well, here's what I told her. I'm going to now have somebody come frequently and I don't want to hear about it anymore. And that solved the problem. He's like, first and foremost, to get to 100, it's going to come from listings, period, end of story. Second of all, and this is going to be real complicated, I need you to take notes. I'm like, all right. He's like, you got to wake up at the same time every day. He's like, get to the same time every day to the office. Pick up the phone at the same time every day. Do that for 3 hours a day. You will be a smashing success in this business. Because when you look at the numbers that Leo said, 76% of agents up until June of 2024 hadn't sold one of their own listings. That means 20-something% of the population is listing all the properties, which is where all the leverage is. And only 1.4% of all agents had done more than 30 transactions a year. That's bananas, bro. That's it. More than 30. So it shows the anomaly of doing 100, 150, 60, whatever it is. Like, you know, you might be doing 60 and think like, oh man, because you're looking at people doing 100. I'm like, dude, only 1.4% of the whole population of agents does more than 30 transactions a year. Is there's a difference between being competitive and being ambitious. So competitive is about comparison. That's fascinating.
Competitive about what?
Is about comparing, right? So part of the reason why you're like, oh, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You're competitive. So what were you doing? Comparing to other people. What ambitious is where I have a love of learning. So he gave an example that in a Netflix documentary, they showed quarterbacks. They showed Kirk Cousins, Marcus Mariota, and Mahomes. Kirk Cousins is extremely competitive, right? The thing about competitors is that oftentimes what they'll do, like Kirk Cousins will have 2 really awesome games and then a really poor game, right? And Kirk Cousins hasn't won any rings, by the way. And they did in the documentary where they showed where Kirk Cousins, he has like a room of me, like his trophy room. And he pulled out like something his high school coach said about him. And he read it and he's like, yeah, that's still me. That's interesting. He hadn't changed and evolved at all. He's just, but he's competitive. Where Mahomes is ambitious. Mahomes is like, he's making up throws, bro. He's throwing sideways. He's like left on. He's like, and he's constantly evolving. What's interesting is when you watch them play, who has more fun? Way more fun. Who has more rings? 3 and counting. So when I looked at that, I was like, oh, so when you first met me, I was more competitive, yes?
Yeah.
And what have I become? More ambitious, yes?
I remember when we sat down,
Yeah.
I remember the number, but you were like, oh yeah, I'll be fine if I get to this number. Like you 10x that shit already.
Right. So, but, and now what's happening is because of that ambition, I'm having way more fun. So I think the sweet spot is a mixture of like competitive without comparing, perhaps as much comparing, where you're playing your own game. I'm just competing against like maybe myself or my own metrics, where maybe the game changes to time. How much time could I save instead of like how much money can I make? And it's independent of what other people think or do. But then being more heavily weighted towards ambition, which is a love of learning. And I think in doing that, like I was telling Natalie, she's like, I think it's crazy that like they asked you to be on a panel to talk about media. Because I would just hammer people on how silly that was or dumb it was. But what I told her is like, huh?
She was saying,
yeah. She's like, I think it's crazy that you're on that panel. And what I told her is that like, I take the responsibility. Like Carla tells me in our family life, she's a very strong, aggressive female. She's like, I have no problem with you leading, but you have to lead. Right? So, and sometimes I don't like that because it puts pressure on me, but it forces me to do it. Right? Well, what I told her is like, not only am I a leader in my family, but like to all the people who've decided to partner with us, it's a really big responsibility to lead. So I need to be ruthlessly, constantly in pursuing the truth. And what is true, learning it so I can give it back to other people. But that's that ambitious piece. And now I'm no longer competing with Brian and feel the need to compete with him, where now it's more like equipping him with all the tools that you need. Isn't that an interesting distinction? Because my life was like way smaller when I was purely competitive. And I was like, rah, but it was more, my impact was way more. It's just selfish.
What changed for you to see that though?
I think, to Lars's point, part of it is reaching, like, let's say you had a mountain off in the distance and you hit the mountain, but then it's not really like fulfilling. as you thought it would. A perfect example of this would be like I did a triathlon with Carla. It was a while ago. And we trained for a long time. It's like this whole thing. And I had two observations when I came across the finish line. The first, there's a picture of me coming across the finish line with Carla. I'm like this. Everybody that's lining up along the finish line is looking in the other direction because they're looking for their person. So that was like this interesting awareness. Like, oh, nobody cares. This, like, literally nobody cares. The second thing that was super aware to me was that when I crossed the finish line, nothing happened. Like, no, like, balloons dropped. Nobody treated me differently. I had the same experience where I had a financial goal in my life to hit like a net worth of like like $1 million. But when I hit it, nothing changed. The guy still flipped me off when he crossed. Like if I, pull up in the road, nobody gives me preferential treatment at Starbucks. They're like, bro, you're cutting me. Like, get out of the way. So it becomes this weird thing where you realize like these things that like the world tells you to pursue competitively actually don't really mean that much. So we live in an economic planet where I want to make sure that I can provide for my, like it says in the Bible, a man who does not provide for his own, specifically those in his house, is worse than an infidel. It's worse than an unbeliever. Like that's my command, right?
Really says that?
Yeah, absolutely says that. And it says a good man, ready, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That's like a command. That's not like a, oh, if you want to. That's like an instruction. Like, I want to get my orders from headquarters, not from like here. You know what I'm saying? So I think, and when it goes back into a bit, it's a long way to answer your question, but the first two sins were not in the world. It was actually in heaven, where there were three archangels. One of them was Lucifer, who was the angel of worship. And he was beautiful. He was the most beautiful thing on the planet. Like a beautiful thing in heaven. Shimmered. Well, he got a glimpse of himself. And the first sin was born. Do you know what it is? Pride. What is competition? Pride. Look at me. Yes? What that led to is the second sin. Because once he was like, look how beautiful I am. Pride was born. The second sin that was born was rebellion against God. Because he started to be like, yo, why are we listening to this guy? Yeah, so that's why it's interesting because, on our calls, that's why I push you so much.
Yeah.
Because it's a command from God, bro. It's not like whether what I want to do.
I've never heard it that way. I know about the providing for in a command. It's just what is the intention?
We talked about that.
That's what I'm like.
Yeah, we're business owners.
Yeah.
We all own, like, as you start to do deals, you own stock. Like, this is like a group of owners getting together. That's badass, right?
Badass. Really cool.
So is your focus going to be like production? Is it attraction or is it both?
I'm definitely going to stay in my lane for sure.
Yeah.
Taking listings.
Yeah, doing your thing.
That's what I do. But I appreciate the opportunity here that it allows me to also do that alongside of it without taking away. Like at KW, like if you really want to recruit agents, like you're recruiting agents. Like that's what you do.
Yeah.
Like I know interest.
Yeah.
But if I can attract agents and we can start doing the social media,
which you can
start doing things and that's alongside of it.
Yep.
That's sweet.
And then
this provides
the opportunity
to do that.
And you have
prime example.
Yes.
Prime example.
And then you have an operational partner in that EXP handles all of the brokerage component.
Right.
And then you dump them into our ecosystem and I'll train them.
Yes.
And Jose and Lars.
Remember when we were on the call? I'm like, bro, we got Aaron, dude. Like we're good.
Well, and and I love
we're good, bro. We got Aaron, dude. Like if you could check an agent, you're like, okay, go talk to Aaron. Like,
yeah, we're good.
There's no way this man, whoever that agent is not dealing with Aaron.
Yeah, exactly. And what I tell our organization is like, I heard this analogy and I love it. Is let's say we were on like a special forces team. We're getting dropped into enemy territory.
Yeah.
We're on an op, right? But we get separated. And you're by yourself in the dark behind enemy lines. Your gear gets scattered.
Right.
And you see somebody coming up over the hill. You're going to have two responses to that. One response is you're going to be like, oh man, it's that guy. Right. The second response is you're gonna be like, fuck yeah, it's that guy, bro. Hey,
yo,
I am gonna be okay.
You heard me say that on the call.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, we're good.
Do I know, like, and trust Chris? Has he added value to me and showed me that he can help me by helping me for free? And then what ends up happening is people start to think to themselves, oh, if he helped me this much for free, how much would he help me if I paid him? Or how much would he help me if I partnered with him?
Yeah.
We went 11 years as a company with no competitors. In the last 4 years, we now have 22 models that look just like us. So the question is in that environment strategically, and if I look at it unemotionally, because we have a tendency as humans to get like romanticize like what we know because we want to be right.
Yeah.
So the goal is to try to like triangulate ideas with believable people unemotionally attached, right? So maybe that worked for me before, but like let me look at the landscape now. So if you have 22 competitors in a space who all have great salespeople, who are all going to say their model's the best and their compensation plan is the best.
Yep.
And what I mean by great salespeople is they can make it sound fantastic. Yes? Going down the path of trying to kind of snipe down models is a loser's game. It's a race to the bottom.
For sure.
What I want to do is elevate above the whole conversation.
Yeah.
How do you elevate above the whole conversation? Is you become the type of person somebody would say yes to without even knowing what you're doing. How do you do that? You add so much value for free.
Yeah.
Yes? Now I'm the brand. Now I'm the type of person where you're like, yeah, dude, I would, like, how can I help? Like Josh, who just went down the stairs, he called me one day. He's like, look, dude, I've watched 100 hours of your content in the last 90 days on YouTube.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool, man. I'm glad it's helpful. That's why we create it.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm like, what's up? How can I help? He's like, yeah, I want to partner with you with EXP. Okay. You got any questions? Nope. You're going down the right path. And the other thing that I would share with you that hopefully is encouraging, because it seems like really overwhelming, is that if it's not worth doing for a decade, it's not worth doing for a day. So I posted into the void for like 2 years. Just into the ether. And I showed to this mastermind that I run. So on YouTube, I had 42 episodes, like 42 pieces of content with like 200 subscribers, like 42 episodes of podcast in 2 years. And for those 2 years, we had 600,000 views. This year, 2 million.
Wow.
Third year in.
Those same pieces of content.
No, well, I've been producing a lot more.
Right.
Plus, I got a team that does thumbnail. Like, we got serious about it.
Yeah.
I have videographers, you know what I mean? So, but the point is like, it's not, it takes a while for people to pay attention, just to stick with it.
Yeah.
Like, it's the right thing.
Agreed.
10% of all TV time on TV screens is on YouTube now.
Yeah.
7.8% is on Netflix. It's actually more than Netflix. So what's going to happen is that the platforms are no longer going to boost engagement. That's not going to be their metric that they're going to look at because you can't really engage on TVs.
Yeah.
What they're going to boost is, do I have a bingeable library of content? Because isn't that what Netflix does?
Next.
Why do they pay so much money for Seinfeld? It's a bingeable library of content.
Next on display. Yeah.
It keeps you on the platform longer, yes?
Yeah.
What have I been doing for the last 3 years? Building a library of what? Bingeable content. So this guy can watch 100 hours.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
So, but here's what's true about that. If that's where it's going, which it is, people are very smart. They'll figure it out. So the cost to do it right now and do it meaningfully, I post 5 times a day or 3 to 4 times a day, 7 days a week, short form, 5 times a week on YouTube, long form. With which directionally, if you had to make a bet on the percentage of time people are going to spend on TVs on YouTube, is that going to go up or down? Up. And as it goes up, what will happen to the cost of producing the content? Bro, do you see what I'm saying? So now, that's why I'm so aggressive.
Right.
Why? 5 years from now, what do you think the cost will be to do what I'm doing? $15,000 a month, yes?
Yeah.
Do you see why the urgency?
Right.
Now it's like, bro, like, you have a small window of opportunity to carve out like real estate on YouTube.
Yes.
Yes?
Wow.
So that's why you got to be like aggressive, because that window's going to shrink.
From your last, whatever years, 3 years, you've been really heavy producing media. I mean, are we talking like 40 hours a week you're shooting?
Oh, no. So here's what's really cool about
media.
that. And I love that your brain went there because that's the assumption people make. I probably spend 15 hours a month because all I'm doing is documenting.
Right.
So like we're having this conversation. Yes. That is going to become a short.
Right.
Yeah. Which positions? Who is the guide?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, but do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So So if you have an organization, like I do a live role play where 67 agents hop on, me and my sponsor, Jose, we role play with people live. It's very helpful to them.
Yeah.
We do that on Zoom. We take the audio, we post a faceless video on YouTube that people can listen to. When I gave a breakout session talk here, he was there. That's going to go on YouTube, chop it up into shorts. Yeah.
That's why I was thinking about podcasting events.
But here's what
you're already doing it.
Yes.
Record it.
And what I would propose is along the podcast lines, I find a couple things to be aware of. Not all guests are the same, which you've noticed. Some people are better than others.
Yeah.
Some people provide better sound bites.
Yeah.
Yes. Some people are prepared.
Yeah.
They are ready, so they don't have to get ready, right? The other is that often what ends up happening is that the people that are on podcasts are just heroes. They basically spend all the time telling them how they're like, I'm so cool and I'm so great.
Right.
They're not actually guides.
Right.
So I find that content to be like, okay.
Okay.
What's actually more valuable, think about this from like the agent community. I feel like there's two types of avatars. One avatar is agents that want to go from like 0 to 100 deals. They want to be more effective, more efficient. They want to be better at lead gen, want to be better at taking listings. Great. The other avatar of agents is like the agent that we're getting ready to bring on, who's doing 75 million in volume, but he's 51 and he has no time. He needs to know about a different set of things. Yes?
Yeah. Totally.
And the content for those avatars is a little different, right? So me shooting a piece of content, let's say on how to do a listing presentation, is far more valuable than a podcast of somebody who's at a stratosphere that I can't even relate to.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to do more deals. If you looked at the numbers, what Leo was sharing with us, 0.014% of agents have done 30 deals or more this year. That means the vast majority of everybody is just trying to do deals.
Trying to do more deals.
Hence, we send them live role plays. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Yes. I have a listing presentation video that has 10,000 views on it. Is that helpful? Yes. We tell them where to get leads. Is that helpful? Do you see? So it's being mindful of who the avatar is and what do they actually want to see, because what the algorithms are at now, most people are doing media on the social graph, which is what it was when it first came out. So like Facebook only showed you stuff that your friends were doing.
Yeah.
So what do we all do? Oh, here's me with Chris. Here's me with Ashley. I'm eating dinner. I'm at the beach, right?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you're the hero there. Second of all, though, TikTok came around like 6, 7 years, whatever it was. Their algorithm's superior because it's on the interest graph.
Right.
Here's why it's superior. What Chris thinks is interesting at, how old are you right now?
35.
35 is much different than what he thought was interesting at 20. So the algorithm changes with your interests, which means they'll keep you there for longer. Yes?
Yeah.
It's superior. When Meta and YouTube saw this, they were like, oh. So what did they come out with? Reels and shorts.
Right.
That's based on the interest graph.
Yeah.
So, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So as such, think about this. What are my avatars interested in? Not what do I want to create?
Yeah.
Yeah? That is the content that I need to be focused on.
Yeah.
And pumping that out with volume and frequency, because frequency equals familiarity. So when they asked me to do a breakout session on attraction, and I was just saying hi to everybody in the crowd. And she's like, yeah, I know you. I see you all the time on my feed. That's incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the point being is that Google says we touch our phones 150 times a day. Texting, checking emails, whatever. About, let's say, an hour to 2 hours of that is on platforms.
Yep.
What would increase the probability that you would see me?
Create content that's geared towards me.
That and frequency.
Yeah.
Yes?
150 times. How many times?
Hence the reason why I'm 3 to 4 times a day, 7 days a week, short form.
Yeah.
Yes? It increases frequency.
Yeah.
And then what you want to do is you want to build an ecosystem of attention, because what people don't realize, I think they're looking at the wrong metrics, where like you want short form is like we're sitting in this giant, imagine sitting in like a town square with billions of people and you go like this, hey. That's all it is. It's like, why would I even stop and listen to Ashley? Why do I even care who she is? That's all it is.
Yeah.
The goal though is to get them to long form.
Yeah. Funnel the long form.
But I have to build an ecosystem of attention to get them there. So I have to have short, medium, which is 10 to 15 minutes. Let's say I shoot a video on how to overcome call reluctance.
Right.
Long form is an hour. Yes? You bring them through the ecosystem. Because when you think about it, like Brunson talks about consumption is actually a form of payment.
Right.
We don't think about it that way, but you're paying me with your most valuable thing, which is your time.
Yes.
And they've done quantifiable, measurable studies that if you consume 15 hours of my content, you're going to engage with me in some way with a high degree of probability. In order to get there on 60-second shorts, somebody would have to watch 5,200 pieces of content. Yes?
Yeah.
In order to get there on long form,
Yeah.
maybe 30 1-hour pieces if you watch half of them. Do you understand?
See,
It's superior.
yeah. That's the final link, really. I mean, we're creating short
All short.
and some medium,
Yeah.
but then like get them into the long game.
You have to create that ecosystem of attention.
Got to have the ecosystem first.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll leave you with is this statistic, which is wild. So YouTube, they did a study trying to figure out, like, what does it take to get to 100,000 subs? How much time does it take?
Okay.
They're doing the study. Halfway through, they realized they're looking at the wrong metric.
Okay.
It wasn't time. Do you know what it was? Posts.
Really?
It takes 1,000 long form pieces of content on average to get to 100,000 subs. So let's do the math on that. If you're doing one a week, it'll take 30 years.
Whoa.
Ready?
Listen to me. If I'm doing 5 a week, it'll take me 3.9. Yes?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which goes back to the race.
Yeah.
Hence the reason why I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to slam the pedal down, because what we're really doing is like, I think the industry is changing dramatically, and the traditional models are more like JCPenney's and Macy's.
Mm-hmm.
They still exist, but they don't make any money.
Yeah.
There's going to be a huge migration to cloud-based. We're the Uber because we're the first to market, so we'll get the lion's share.
Yeah.
But what I'm aware of is the best way to ensure that I get my unfair share is to make sure that everybody who's an agent knows who I am. Period.
Yeah.
And you perceive me as a guide to help you to solve your problems.
Yeah.
65% of Americans have all their money tied up into their house. They're refreshing their Redfin every goddamn day. But you think you know better than them. So you go in there and try to authoritatively tell them, this is what it is. And if they don't like it, what do? See you later.
I had a home that I did a comp for that was like 630.
Yeah.
They said they had $1 million home.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
Ask questions. So I'll show you how to do it. Instead of trying to be authoritative, ask questions to help people to get self-discovery. So these are some key phrases, and then I'll role play them so you can hear what they sound like. That's an option. Somebody says to you, yeah, I want to list for 700, and it's like 600. Yeah, that's an option. I mean, I want to be clear. You're the boss here. My job is to help you to make a decision. It's never to talk you into doing anything. So we'll go over the information together as a team, and then we can decide what makes sense for you and your family. Fair enough? I guess I'm curious, having seen this information, seen what's active on the market and not selling, seen what's sold and closed most recently, I'm wondering, if you were a buyer and you were going to buy this place all over again, where do you think you would feel comfortable making an offer that you believe would be reflective of fair market value? It forces them to address reality. Guys, I need you to understand something. You guys, we all think as humans, we're good, accurate assessors of reality. We are not. We want to warp reality to shape what we want. And we have all of these psychological quirks. Who knows what the endowment effect is? The endowment effect is because it's mine, I think it's better. You watch this with your clients. When they're selling, they're like, oh yeah, these fucking 20-year-old kitchens are fantastic. They're coming back in style. But then when they become a buyer, they're like, what the fuck are these sellers thinking? You know what resulting is? Because it happened in 1995, it means it's going to happen today. That's dumb. But our brains do this. Well, when I was selling a home in 2005, my uncle's sister's brother just put a sign out for it and it worked. What causes you to think that that's true today? Well, 6 months ago, my neighbor, the cost of money was half, right? But staying out of, like, I present playfully and with emotion, but I'm not going to talk to a seller though. You're going to say to me, I'm thinking 700. Okay. And trust me, I'd love to be your superhero. Put an S on my chest, cape on my back, and get you 700. At the same time, are we in agreement that what something's worth is what somebody's willing to pay? Would you agree with that? Yeah. So let's take a look at this information. I mean, we can see here the last 2 closed sales in your neighborhood was 600. And we can see here on my iPad, if you guys are presenting with pieces of paper, I'm going to run into your listing presentation and smack you in the fucking head. What are you doing, bro? Do you ride a horse to the fucking listing appointment? Like, all of you are tied to your devices all the time. That's how you consume information. Why are you presenting with pieces of paper? They're one-dimensional. You can't zoom in. You can't look at shit. You're going to tell them their kitchen's nicer, but they can't zoom in to actually see that it's nicer. And I bring my iPad and I zoom in on the kitchen. So let's take a look. This one's sold at like 600, and we see here. How would you say that kitchen compares to yours?
Well, Mine is really maintained well, and it's nice, and it's all white.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate it. I respect that. And we can see here, did they redo this kitchen?
They did.
Yeah, so, you know, and I'm aware you can have your own personal preference. At the same time, you have a remodel kitchen, they have a remodel kitchen. Would you say that that's accurate?
No, mine is not.
Okay, so yours isn't remodeled.
It's well maintained.
I see. I understand. Now, I'm curious if you were a buyer, not a seller, and you, because I know those hats are different, and if you were going to buy this place all over again, which kitchen do you think you would have preference? One that was modified or one that's well maintained?
Well, I really like my kitchen. It's my style.
I appreciate that. And what I'm aware of is, you know, sometimes I know I can do this myself, is I assume that everybody's going to like what I like. I guess my question to you is that true for you in your experience in life that everybody likes what you like?
No.
Unfortunately not, right? I mean, I would like it to be that way. What did I just do? Did I make her wrong? Who did I make wrong? I was like, yo, I do this too. I get it. I brought it back to me. And then I'm like, okay, so, and let's take a look at this other one. We see here, this one sold, looks like it's $615. And I want you to see, when did that sell? Say last month.
Last month.
Yeah, and we can see here, let's look at the pictures of this one. How is their kitchen and bathrooms done?
They're updated.
They're updated as well, right? And I guess my question to you is this, because again, I'd love to be your superhero, put an S on my chest, cape on my back, and get you $1 million while we're at it. Because we get compensated more the more we help you sell it for. At the same time, if you were a buyer, not a seller, because I know those hats are different. And if you were going to buy this place all over again, knowing that you're probably going to be modifying kitchens and baths, honestly, where do you think you'd feel comfortable making an offer that you believe would be reflective of fair market value?
I would probably offer 600.
Okay. And don't you think most buyers are pretty similar to you?
Probably.
Okay. So then it sounds like we're in agreement that the marketplace is showing us somewhere around 600 seems to make sense. So one, I didn't make her wrong for her thinking, because some of you guys are like, really, bro? That's what you think? And it's you don't hide it in your face or your body language. You're like, you know what I'm saying? You don't. It just comes out. You're like, whoa, really? Whew. So I stay neutral and I didn't make you wrong. And then we go over it, but then I help you to self-discover by asking you questions. Instead, did I tell you that those kitchens were nicer than yours?
No.
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 Never said that.
Did I say that?
No.
Do you guys say that shit? Yes. All the time. Imagine somebody walked in your house and was like, bro, I got a shirt that's nicer than that. Immediately he'd be like, bro, like, right? But that's what we do.
Yeah.
And then we'll say stupid shit like, well, what specifically causes you to believe that you're, really? Imagine me being like, what specifically caused you to believe that those glasses were cool? You'd be like, bro, I love these glasses. Like, you're an asshole, right? But do we do that to sellers? So then I asked you this question, and there's a lot going on in this question. I was like, so if you were a buyer, not a seller, and you notice what I did with my body, it was intentional. I know those hats are different. What am I asking you to do when I do this as an adult?
To think like a buyer.
To take the hat off. You understood that implicitly without me even speaking those words to you. I know those hats are different. So if you were going to buy this place all over again, knowing that you were probably going to redo, you know, kitchens and baths, honestly is neurolinguistic programming. Everything after the word honestly has to be what? Honest. So now your brain is triggered to be like, I have to be what? Honest. Don't bullshit. Tell me the truth. And you were like, yeah, probably somewhere around 600. Yeah. I said, I'm in agreement with you. It's her idea, not mine. I'm in agreement with you. So it sounds like we're in agreement. The market is showing us somewhere around 600. Who's showing us? What do you guys want to do? I'm showing you. I'm the all omnipotent, omnipresent real estate agent. I know everything. I do 5 deals a year and I know everything. So that's very intentional. So now you're totally primed to answer that accurately. I'm taking off these frames that actually distort reality. Being in the seller perspective distorts the reality because you're going to want to inflate it. So I take that off by saying the hat thing, right? So from there, it comes down to strategy on how we get there. So what I'd like to do now is to go over the pricing strategies you have at your disposal, because I want you to feel comfortable with the one you end up choosing, and whatever you decide, I'm going to support you 100%. Fair enough? Do I sound like I'm on her team? That's why you get all this resistance. And then you walk out, you're like, God, those guys are such assholes. I don't know. I'm like, no, dude, you're presenting it wrong. And when I give you options, how do you feel?
More comfortable.
And in
Control.
control. But who's actually in control? You ever seen Star Wars where he's like, these are not the drones you're looking for. And then they just go away, right? So now I'm like, okay, so the first option that we have at our disposal is we can position the property a little bit higher than 600. The logic behind that strategy, Rose, is we can always come down, we can't go back up, And the logic is I want to leave room to negotiate. Now, why am I saying that to them? Because they're fucking thinking it.
So that answered my next question.
Right?
So it was like,
'Cause-
but I want to list.
You see? So I'm going to address it. And what I'm going to do is like, dude, I want to put it all on the table. Like, here it is. Right? I don't want anything like that's left undone or unsaid. And there's not that there's anything wrong with that strategy. There are a few considerations, though, Rose, that I'd like to review with you. So that way you're fully equipped to decide what you feel is best, okay? So the first consideration is that option usually takes longer. Now, I know you shared with me that you really need to be moved to Arizona in the next like 120 days. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what that would mean then is we have to be under contract in the next 30 to 45 because it usually takes 30 to 45 days to close. Have you thought about that?
No.
So if we utilize that strategy of starting higher and coming down, it could end up jeopardizing timing. Now, let me ask you this. What would happen on the outside chance if we were still sitting here 4 or 5 months from now and this home wasn't sold? What would that mean for you and your family?
Oh, I don't think that'll happen. The market's hot and properties are being sold every day.
Yeah, which I appreciate. At the same time, what I am aware of is that, things have changed. So I guess I'm just wondering, just for my own knowledge, what would happen if that did happen for you? What would that mean for you
Be
guys?
in trouble because I need to.
Okay. So now that's something to consider with regards to that strategy. Okay. Now, the second strategy that I've seen sellers just like you deploy in this market is where they see what's reasonable and they, based on comparables like we just did, and they choose to position the property very close to what's sold and closed most recently, or actually a little bit below. Do you know why they would do that?
To get more buyers.
That's right. It creates a lot of urgency. You get a lot of people in. Perhaps we can get more than one offer, force people to compete, and we'll end up coming to the surface as the absolute most that somebody's willing to pay. You have a choice to make, and whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. One option is we start a little bit higher. Logic being, I could come down, I'll go back up. I want to leave room to negotiate. And in doing so, understand that timing issue and how it could affect that. The second option is we choose an option that homeowners like yourself, I've seen choose frequently with great results, position it very competitively, close to that 600 number, or actually a little bit below, maybe like 590. And in doing so, we can get a lot of people interested, force them to compete. Not only will we end up with the most that somebody's willing to pay, but we'll get the best terms and conditions for you with the best certainty of an offer that's going to get you out to Arizona. Now, either one of those are okay. Based on what you're looking to accomplish and why in the time frame you'd like to make it happen in, what do you think we should do?
I'm ready to sign.
You see how that's completely different than what you're doing. You're making them wrong. You're wanting to argue with them. I know and you don't, wanting to fight with them. You're stupid, I'm smart. And we're completely flipping that around. And I'm couching it in like, what's important to you? So we talked about timing, and then we talked about offers and the certainty of making the move and maybe getting multiple offers. Then, you know what I did? What did I say to her at the end? What do you think we should do? But remember something, whose home is it? Whose equity is it? Whose decision is it? So stop trying to make it yours. Key phrases, this is an option. You're the boss. Whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. And again, stop trying to lead with authority. Stop trying to be like, I know and you don't, because they have access to all the same information because of the internet. This is more collaborative, right? You're going to share with them information, help them interpret it, help them to make a decision that works for them and their family. I haven't talked to him in a while. Yeah, you said, I remember I spoke to you one time and I asked him like, hey, how you doing? You're like, Aaron. I'm like, what? You're like, we're always good because we're winners.
Always good. Always good.
That's right. So I had a pretty unique experience recently. I got invited to be on the Grant Cardone's celebrity cruise that was in the Bahamas. And I figured it could be helpful or useful for us to just kind of talk about, because me and you would talk about it separately, probably on a phone call that nobody would hear. We can talk about it together as a team with regards to like what I learned and how we can apply it to what it is that we're doing in the real estate space.
Love it.
Yeah. So one of the things that me and you have subscribed to for a long time is just perpetually and constantly getting ourselves into rooms that are uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when I first met you, how many transactions do you think you were doing at that time when we first connected, whatever that was, like 10, 11 years ago?
Maybe like 15, somewhere on there. 15, 17.
Yeah. And at the time I was doing like 100.
Yeah.
And that was very uncomfortable for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we started role playing, and it was also really uncomfortable for you because you weren't kind of at that level yet. You've blossomed into a marvelous, fantastic salesperson. But when I met him, that wasn't necessarily the case, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that individual was somebody, Neil, which you know, and I've spoken to him every week for like 15 years. When I initially met him, though, I was doing about 50 transactions and he was doing 200. So this cruise was interesting for me because like I was in rooms with people that are just operating at very high frequencies, doing very high things.
Yeah.
I know that there's other things that are in life that are, important. In business, the measuring stick that we have is, kind of revenue or what we're doing. And like 0.01% of real estate agents ever do $1 million a year in revenue. 4% of all businesses in the United States, all businesses like laundromats and, kind of
Everything.
cookie shops and everything in between, yoga studios, ever get to $1 million in revenue. So that's a hurdle. It's a high watermark. What's up, Andres? How you doing, brother? He's the one who gave me the invite. Reluctantly, though, I had to call him. So it wasn't reluctantly. I appreciate you, bro. So what I'm aware of is at that time when I got proximity to Neil, it was incredibly uncomfortable. And while I'm on this cruise, these people are vibrating at very high frequencies. I was at a dinner where pretty much everybody at the dinner is doing 5 to 17 million, almost $20 million in revenue. And me and you are used to in the real estate space, and I don't mean this egotistically, it's just true. If we're in rooms, we're usually those people for other people. What's wild is it's been a long time since I was like uncomfortable. And that was uncomfortable, right? Kind of being in those rooms. So, and I know that that's something you still do. You were telling me like that mastermind you're in, Collective Genius, it's uncomfortable for you because there are people in those rooms that are doing, 15, 20 X what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was in a previous room, and I think high end, top of the room, people were making $3 to $4 million in revenue, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. So I felt like I stopped growing. So when I joined the Collective Genius Mastermind, I basically got involved in a room where I was the smallest fish in that room. And it was interesting because in that mastermind, in order to qualify, you either have to do 100 investment deals a year, which I don't do 100 investment deals a year, or have a sizable real estate portfolio, which that was how I was able to qualify because of the real estate holdings that we have. But I remember when I started talking to people, I talked to the first person. I'm like, man, this guy's amazing. Like a lot more in revenue than what I was presently doing at the time. Talked to the next person, and every person that I talked to on that mastermind was extremely high level. And I felt like the smallest fish in the room. So what I started doing is it reminded me back to where I got in the first room, the first events that I would attend, where I was looking up to people and those people were helping me stretch and grow. And then I stagnated. Now I got into a bigger room and I felt like I was in that same position where I was like, okay, what is subject to? What is a wraparound mortgage? How do you do a syndication? How do you buy a storage unit complex? What is pay per lead? And I started learning all these things, and I felt like that again. But I think one of the key takeaways that you told me is that on your boat tour, the people on there that like Grant or some of the other people on there, they're consistently doing that where they're getting themselves in bigger and bigger rooms. I felt like I stagnated for a while where I got really comfortable in one room, and it wasn't until I jumped into that Collective Genius Mastermind that I started to grow again. And now there's people like doing $40 million in revenue, $50 million in revenue, which is.
Yeah. And I think with that, and to your point, yes, Grant does have that. And who that is people like Bob Duggan or Glenn Stearns, who are like billionaires.
Yeah.
So we look at Grant and we see somebody who's like has a tremendous amount of certainty. And he was just saying, like, even when he pushes into new things, like he feels fear. He goes to somebody like Bob to kind of triangulate ideas and say, hey, what do you think? And Bob, who's on the Forbes 400 list, he's one of the richest people on planet Earth. which is wild to think about. You know, I had a 20-minute conversation with him at the gym. Like, he's literally one of the richest people on planet Earth.
Well, it's crazy because at the first event that I would go to, you'd meet people at the gym as well too that were doing $2, $3, $4 million in revenue. Same thing happened at Collective Genius, and now for you, just being part of the room, you got to have a 20-minute conversation with a billionaire at the gym. You know,
that's right. So it's interesting that success leaves clues. Like, if I was sleeping in and going and eating waffles and like doing that stuff, I wouldn't even meet those people. So yeah, and Grant goes to somebody like him and triangulates and says, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking of doing. Like, what do you think?" And Bob was like, "Yeah, and you should do 10 of them." You know what I mean? Because he's thinking at like this whole other scale. Grant's like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to do this one thing," and he's like, "Yeah, that's great. The logic behind it's sound. It makes sense. Go do 10."
Tell me about the boat, bro. Like, what did it have?
Oh.
Like, how many rooms? Like, talk to me about that. How much do you think it was worth, too?
What do you mean?
Like, what do you think the value of something like that cost? Like a boat like
you mean
that?
the whole boat?
Yeah, the whole boat.
Or, like $1 billion probably. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, it's like hundreds of millions of dollars. I have no idea.
Were you guys stationed in one location, or did you guys get to go to different locations? Or
No, we went around, bro. Went around the Caribbean, went around the Bahamas and different places. San Salvador and then the Bahamas. Yeah.
Did you guys get down anywhere or just stay on the boat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were able to get off the boat. The issue was, though, is if you get off the boat, you would miss some of the speakers.
Got it.
So it's like, listen to a billionaire or get off the boat. It's like, probably going to sit and listen to a billionaire. That's what I'm probably going to do. So we got off once on the day before, like the last day. We got off in the Bahamas, me and Carla, and went to the beach, which was cool. But the rest of the time we were there. Yeah, the service is like, they talk about like the Ritz-Carlton experience. And in our business, we talk about like providing like high levels of service to people. Bro, they do it. I was hearing stories from people like one woman, because they have like different themes. So one night is like Havana night. So you got to dress up like, Havana. And then the next night is like black tie night. So you're wearing like a black tie and dresses. The next night is like blue night. And then there's a white night. You know what I mean? So you got to like bring clothes that fit the criteria, which is a new experience, But anyway, this woman, she had a little, like a clothespin for her dress because it was like, showing a little bit too much. So she wanted to like restrict it. So she sent it to the dry cleaners for them to dry clean it. Bro, they sent her back the dress perfectly stitched. She didn't ask to do it. They just did it. That's wild. Another example, at a dinner, they're sitting right next to us. This guy's like, yeah, it was a sushi restaurant. I really, really like sake. The guy's like, okay, awesome. You know what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to give you a sake tasting. Okay, great. So he brings out all these different forms of sake. There's somebody there that's like playing a piano right next to you. It's like this whole experience. And the guy asked the guy, he's like, hey, what would have that cost? It was like a $5,000 tasting.
Wow.
With the bottles and all that stuff. They just did it. So it really got me thinking with regards to like whether you're in, like whether you're exactly experiences, and it's small things. Like you would think it's not that big a deal, but everywhere you go on the ship, everybody's like, hello, Mr. Morales. How are you, Mr. Morales? You having a good day, Mr. Morales? Do you need anything, Mr. Morales? Like every single place that you go. And you would think that that's a really small thing, but like it makes a really big difference because virtually in any other business, I start thinking to myself, in any other business, does anybody greet me? No. You know what I mean? They're just like, yeah. Or they don't even pay attention to you. How many times have you gone into an establishment and people don't even pay attention to you?
Yeah. They don't even acknowledge you.
Right. They don't even acknowledge you. And this was everybody. I'm talking about the people that not only clean the rooms, but to the chefs, to the kind of entertainment staff, to the gym staff, the people who do like stretching in the evening or do yoga class. Like everybody is not only acknowledging you, but making you feel safe and making you feel welcome. So that was an interesting experience as me and you continue to push into kind of expanding our ecosystem and expanding our community is and I'm thinking like, how can we continue to provide like that level of touch, personal touch, that level of service, really? Yeah, which was, you know, an interesting experience. And Grant rented the whole boat. Think about that. The entire ship.
Did he say how much it cost to rent it?
No, but
No.
it had to be, it was like millions and millions and millions of dollars. Probably like $3-4 million, probably.
Yeah.
Easy. Because that's the way he thinks, right? He's like, yeah, let's rent out the whole thing. And like, we'll fill it up. And me and you started talking because, like, you know, we have this Do More Deals Summit coming. If you're watching, you should be there. It's going to be fire. We have some of the best in the industry in one place. You got the Jose Luis Moraleses of the world doing $2 million in GCI. I'm going to be doing a talk. We have Pace Morby, who's going to be in the building, who has the #1 best-selling creative finance book in the country. We have the guy who created and founded the Enzo Dialer. We have the guy who created and founded Need to Sell My House Fast. Like, guys, if you want to do more deals, this is the place to be. But me and Jose, this is the first time we've ever done this at this scale. We did one earlier this year, but it was smaller. And people don't realize, and Grant was even saying this, he's like, I have no idea how I'm going to do it. You know, when people came to him and said, hey, you know, Ryan Secco came to him and was like, hey, we should open up this investing instead of just being friends and family. We should do a syndication and raise money. You know what Grant's first response was, Jose?
No.
He said no. What was my first response when you told me about EXP? I was like, no, not gonna do that. I'm good. And then his Sherry Hamilton, his COO, she came to him and was like, hey, we should do an event. We should throw a growth con and rent out all of Marlins Stadium. Grant said, no, there's no way. We're not gonna do that. No way we're gonna do that. She's like, I think we should. Like, let's go take a look. And he went and took a look. And when he saw it, he's like, oh, yeah, let's do that. He had no idea if he was going to sell it out. And you know what he said, which was interesting? He's like, truthfully, you know, he started getting reports every single like day, how many tickets they sold. You know what he said he was most concerned about, Jose? He wasn't concerned about losing money. He was concerned about being embarrassed that nobody showed up. So that drive, he got committed and he just figured it out and he did it. And me and you were talking, it's like, yeah, we're doing it at a much smaller scale. But I realize that this event that we're doing is at the same scale financially as the build events that they do across the country. We're doing our own build. And me and you were talking about it, like, you know, not on camera, obviously, but we're like, yeah, we don't really know what we're doing. But we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And every time you do that, you end up building kind of trust in yourself that you can figure it out.
And you can sell it out, and you can get people there. You can fill in seats and everything like that. But it's funny because when you said the biggest concern is nobody showing up, I think for me even too, when I do events, it's not the money. It's like, okay, like what if nobody is there? You know?
Right. And what's cool is that's Grant's concern too. So we think that these people possess like, I don't know, like something superhuman. They're not. They're human, bro. He gets nervous and scared every time he does something. Like when he's doing a new fund now, which I told you about, which is very interesting, where he takes Bitcoin, he buys an apartment building that's below market value, below replacement cost. Let's say for 72 million, he adds 15 million worth of Bitcoin to it. And then when you invest in the fund, you're investing basically in a building and a Bitcoin, which is interesting because now it's backed by real estate.
Yeah,
that's cool. Me and you were talking off camera. I'm like, yeah, I understand it as a storehouse of value. Like that makes sense. And in this way, I can do it, but it's backed by real estate versus like if I do it and it goes to zero, then it's backed by nothing.
Yeah.
Well, when he first, like somebody brought that to him, what do you think his answer was at first?
No.
But he had to get to himself to a place of certainty. He read a book called The Bitcoin Standard. He read it twice. I need to know. And I started to think about that. Isn't that the same thing that me and you did with media? You first and me second?
Yeah.
You went to Pineda. Bro, I followed your lead on that. What's up, Roy? How you doing, brother? You went to Pineda first. And he was cheaper when you went because he wasn't as big. So you went to him first. You paid him. You learned. You applied, and it worked.
And that's why I asked about the mastermind. I said, what masterminds are you involved in? He said, I'm involved in these. And then I applied, paid $25,000 and got in basically, you know?
Yeah. And people don't realize that's the other thing about getting on this ship is in proximity. So we did a lunch and learn today, right?
And we were there, and there was a guy there. What's up, Ray? What's up, Deshaun? So there was a guy there who was with one of these flat fee companies, right? And he's like, yeah, I get to keep all the commissions. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. What do you get? Nothing. So I told him a story. I'm like, look, whether you have faith or not, there's some interesting stuff you can learn from the Bible. And King Solomon was like, one of the wealthiest people in human history. When God went to him and asked him what he wanted, because he's like, yo, you can have whatever you want. What do you want? You know what he requested? Wisdom. And with the wisdom, what happened? He got everything else.
That's
so what I was pointing out to him is like, look, dude, because he's like, oh, he was asking me questions like, oh, do they offer any money for marketing? Do they offer any money for like an office? I'm like, dude, listen to me. You're focused on the wrong thing. You're focused on little incremental dollars, which actually go down in value over time. They're actually not worth that much. Instead of being focused on how can I acquire the wisdom? How can I get access to what's true? Does that make sense? And once I have and that's what Grant was saying, you have to get yourself to a place of certainty. I have to know. So when I went the route that you went, you did the same thing I did. You went and saw Ryan.
Yeah.
You watched him. You observed what's going on here. What are they doing? How's this working? And then you applied. So what Grant was saying and what Bob said, they both said the same thing. Observe, then you start to take action. You iterate. The reason why you iterate and you iterate fast is you get a lot of feedback. And then once you get feedback, you continue to tinker to then you get to a place of certainty. I know this. Same way I know the sky is blue and the grass is. Same way I know it's daytime outside right now. I know it. And once you get to a place of certainty, what's wild about that is I was telling somebody, let's say somebody knows for sure that they're going to be late and they're going to miss their plane. They're in the airport and they are running to get to their plane.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going in the opposite direction, what are you going to do if you see that person running?
Move.
Get out of the way. When you get yourself to a place of certainty, people get out of your way because you just know it's true. Now, if anybody else wants to get to the same destination, what are they going to start to do? Follow the person that's running. You ever been somewhere, Jose, where you're like, I have, where like, I don't know, maybe like you're in the airport and they said something over the intercom and you were talking about Yellow or whatever. I was talking to Carla and like, I didn't hear them fully. What's the first thing I do? And I see somebody like moving aggressively in that direction. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And they look back and they're like, no, like we got to go. Like we're going to miss a plane. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing here. So I got to get data, learn, right? After I acquire the data, then I got to iterate, start to do stuff. I get feedback. Then as that happens, I continue to refine. Then I get myself to a place of certainty. I know this. And then when you get to a place of certainty, people move out of your way. And then you start to move mountains. You could do things that are wild. So like, and I started to think about this as I'm hearing both of them say this. Bob, when we're having the 20-minute conversation, Grant, when he's talking, right? And they think very clearly, they're vibrating at high frequencies. Yeah. I started to reflect back and I'm like, oh, that's true. So the way me and you learned residential resale, what do? We got access to people who could give us data. Yes?
Yeah.
This is what this is. This is what the stack time on top of. This is what's important. Then we started to take massive action in iterating, right? Iterate. Keep doing it. Refining. Then what ended up happening? Now I know.
Yeah. It's almost like
I told you recently. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's what you told that guy. Like that guy is like, oh, like, do you guys have offices? Do you guys provide marketing? I think most people are focused on the wrong things. And if you literally just focus on finding wisdom, that's the game changer right there, you know? But it's completely shifting the focus basically from, okay, how much is this split? How much is this? You're focused on the wrong things. It's all about the wisdom. Like I think the like when I started in real estate, the very first I think realization that was game changing was that all of the leverage is on the listing side. So if I want to be like a top producing agent, a lot of the top producing agents do 50% or more of their business on the listing side. That was the first piece of wisdom that was shared with me. You know, I think a lot of people
And
aren't getting
think
the
about how valuable that one piece of data is.
Yeah.
One piece of data. That one piece of data is, bro, it's worth $1 million.
Minimum.
I mean, you were kind enough to share with me. We were on vacation together, which we should do again. That was fun. But we were on vacation. You're like, yeah, dude, like if you didn't teach me how to do this, like none of this stuff would be happening.
Yeah.
It's just data. It's like, bro, how valuable is it to get proximity to the data? Bro, I shouldn't be worried about how much does it cost. I'm like, independent of like sponsorship, we're all in the same company. And we all are shareholders. The way you incentivize people dictates behavior and it influences behavior. This is right here is a bunch of owners talking to each other. And that's wild because in other models, it's basically hierarchical and that's not the case.